Hello students, welcome to this video tutorial titled Conclusions about Adding Integers. The whole strategy behind teaching you different techniques about how to add integers using tiles first and then with number lines is so that you can internalize those techniques and use them when you get stuck. However, my hope is that you start to figure out how to add integers without drawing tiles or number lines. So let's begin with this note. Now that you have learned a few techniques on how to add integers, let's figure out some basic rules for adding integers using mental math. Okay? So we want to use mental math instead of drawing out the tiles or drawing out a number line. All right, there are three basic rules. Okay? Rules number one and rule number two, very simple. Rule number one, if the integers are all negative, then the answer will always be negative. Okay? Let's look at this sentence here. So what we do is, the rule is, we add all the absolute values. Absolute values of the integers, and don't forget a negative sign for your answer, because our answer is going to be a negative integer. So let's review. What does absolute value mean? Well, the absolute value is simply the number. So for example, -2, its absolute value is 2. We just take away whatever sign is in front of that integer. So add all the absolute values of the integers. So let's look at example 1. The absolute value of -2 is 2. The absolute value of -3 is 3. 2 plus 3 is 5. Then we add the negative sign. So this answer is going to be -5. Okay, simple. All right, let's have a look at example 2. The absolute value of 1 plus 4 is 5, plus 2 is 7. So if we add those absolute values up, we get a total of 7, and then don't forget the negative sign. Let's look at example 3. 3 plus 3 is 6, plus 2 is 8, plus 4 is 12. So if we add all the absolute values up, we get a sum of 12, and we know it's going to be a negative integer. So that's rule number one. If the integers are all negative, the answer will always be negative. Okay, so let's look at the opposite rule. Rule number two. If the integers are all positive, the answer will always be positive. Okay? Let's look at this sentence at the bottom of the box. Add all the absolute values of the integers, and don't forget a positive sign. Or if you're writing your answer in standard form, no sign. So rule number two is just basically addition before you ever learned anything about integers. Okay? So 4 plus 5 is 9, plus 1 is 10. So you can write this answer as positive 10, or simply in standard form, 10. All right, example 2. 1 plus 4 is 5, plus 7 is 12, plus 2 is 14, plus 3 is 17, plus 10 is 27. So you can write it as positive 27, or even better, in standard form, just 27. Okay, so rule number one, rule number two, very, very simplistic. So let's look at the challenging rule. Rule number three. If there are both positive and negative integers, and there usually are, then the answer will depend on will depend on. So this is what I mean. So when we have this situation, positive and negative integers, we need to follow 4 steps. Okay, so here they are. Step A, look at the absolute value of each integer you are adding. So if we look at example 1, we have -6, the absolute value is 6, and +5, we have an absolute value of 5. What sign is the integer with the greater absolute value? So in this case, 6 has a greater absolute value than 5, and its sign is negative. So step C, this will be the sign of the answer. So I'm just going to put negative there because this is a negative. Now subtract the absolute values of the two integers. 6 subtract 5 is 1. Don't forget the sign. I've already written it in here. So the answer to -6 plus 5 is -1. Let's go to example 2. 3 plus -7. Well, the absolute value of 3 is 3, +3 is 3, and the absolute value of -7 is 7. Rule number 2, rule B. What sign is the integer with the greater absolute value? Well, the greater absolute value is 7, and the sign is negative. So I know my answer is going to be negative again. Now subtract the absolute values of the two integers. So 7 subtract 3 is 4. The answer to +3 plus -7 is -4. Okay, so what happens when you get a situation like this, where you have a couple of negative integers and a couple of positive integers? Okay, so the first thing is, let's group the negative integers together. -5 and -10 are -15. Okay, and then what I'm going to do is, I'm going to group the positive integers together right here. 6 plus 1 is 7. Okay? All right, so let's look at the absolute values. The absolute value that has the greater absolute value is 15. The sign of that answer is negative. So we know that this answer is going to be negative as well. Subtract the absolute values of the two integers. 15 subtract 7 is 8. So the answer to -5 plus -10 plus 6 plus 1 is -8. Okay, so those are the three rules. Rule number 1, rule number 2, very simple. Rule number 3, you just got to think about it a little bit. So I hope this helps kind of make some conclusions about adding integers. Thanks for watching. Bye.